So we're going to do this copy of this drawing by Raphael today. And we're going to begin with a foreshortened cranium. So it's not quite a circle. And we're going to come down and add the face. And we're sort of starting with a very simplified version of what we're looking at. I'm going to throw a little neck on there. And I'm going to immediately start looking for the line of the eyes. It's very important to get this angle correct and the placement. So I would say that, hang on. Try that again. So if I go from one pupil through the other one, we end up with about a 4-degree angle. There's the bottom of the chin. I would say the top of the head is about here. And you'll notice that the eye line is slightly above center. In other words, this section is just a little bigger than this section. The reason for that may be that his head's tipped up slightly, so we're not seeing the full height of the cranium. It may be a drafting error on Raphael's part. It may be that this guy just has a small cranium. Be really careful in this angle. And then the next thing we're always going to do is estimate where the bridge of the nose is. So here's the edge of the face. There's the bridge of the nose. Here's the back of the head. And I would estimate that that's about 1/8 of the way over. So in other words, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Approximately 8 units across. So that puts us about there. It's really useful to think of those fractions because most people, number one mistake people are going to make is going to be to put the nose too close to the middle like that. And if you do that, nothing else is going to work. So you don't need to measure it too carefully, but if you want, you can double check your work. 4 units should get us sort of near the middle of the head, and then another 3.5 or 4 to the back of the head. Really pay a little attention to that. I'm going to go right from the bridge of the nose to the line of the eyebrow. Notice I made a little indent right here for the eye socket. And that's going to allow me to measure my way to the bottom of the nose, which is usually halfway between the eyebrow and the bottom of the chin. I'm going to say that his nose is a little longer than that. So instead of being halfway, it's a little below halfway. Maybe about there. And that might be just because his eyebrows are very high. Some people's eyebrows come down really close to their eyes, but his eyebrows are pretty high. I'm not too confident about this yet, so I'm just going to put a little shadow where I think the bottom of the nose is. The line of the lips is about 1/3 of the way down, and I'm just going to show that also with just a little dark. I'm going to show a little suggestion of dark for the eyelid. And then I'm going to go and start shadow mapping the shadow side of the head. I have a few landmarks for the features, and I'm going to go immediately to these shadow shapes. See where the light ends along the edge of the nose here and here. So I'm going to do, okay, I'm going to shade backwards because this is a right-handed drawing and I'm left-handed. So I'm going to do this, reach around with my hand and shade the wrong direction. So if you're right-handed, this will be easier for you. And I'm losing focus. Hang on. Okay, now we're going to shadow map the main shadow. And would you agree that we measure from here to here where the light ends, and then here to here where the back of the skull is? You see how the light is ending about halfway, about centered on the form? So you can check that. Make sure this and this are about the same. And then we're going to do a very faint shadow map of the main shadow along the side of the face, and for shading along there. As always, I want you to appreciate that before we've done a single detail, we are starting to have a sense of the overall form in light and shade and the big shapes. And that's always important to do before you start putting in eyelashes and pupils and all that kind of stuff. So this is where the hair starts, and then the hair kind of arcs out. Again, I'm thinking of it as a big form, arcs out behind the cranium. And I think it would be smart to make the first real detail I do the hat. Because putting the hat in is going to give us a real sense of the size of the head. And I already know where this eyebrow is. So I'm going to go a little bit above the eyebrow. And then I'm going to sweep around. Sometimes I would recommend blocking this in first, but this is such a nice clean arc. I'm just going to draw the arc as I see it. I'm not thinking of it as a set of straight lines. I'm just, look at the beautiful way that this curve flows into the curve of the hair. Now, I know a lot of you are great at drawing features, and if you had just been left to your own devices, you probably would have drawn one eye and then drawn another eye and then drawn the nose and then drawn the mouth, and all those features would have looked great. But what are the chances that they all would have been in exactly the right place? Not, in my experience, not too good. Now, I'm going to share with you some of my thinking right now. I was just wondering where to put this. And the way I thought about it was, I already know where this is. And if I just extend this curve, it kind of flows into the back of the hat. So that's what I'm going to draw. And that's not because these two forms are connected, but they are connected visually. Can you see that? And if you learn to visually relate forms that are kind of far apart like that, your drawing will get better and better. It's a great aid for placement to relate those distant forms. And the last part of the hat is the cap part, which again I'm going to just draw as a double curve. Okay, the last thing I want to do before I do details is place the darks of the irises. To do that, I'm going to have to put a sort of a vague shadow. And then I'm going to just place the darks of the irises like that. Notice I didn't outline them yet. I just sort of pop them in as little darks. And that's going to give me some idea if I'm directing the gaze the way I want to direct it. So it has been noted that I might have a little too much space between the eyes. So I want to show you how easy it is to experiment with different placements because I didn't commit myself to a hard outline yet. So I can try replacing that eye a little bit to the left, and I think that does look better. If I'm remembering correctly, this may be considered a young self-portrait by Raphael. And there is a clue that it might be a self-portrait in the gaze, because can you tell that the eyes are not looking exactly the same direction? And I want you to pretend you're looking in the mirror right now when you look at this drawing. And if you look at the eye on the left, it's looking right at you. And if you look at the eye on the right, it's looking right at you. But if you try to look at both of them together, they're kind of skewed. They're looking different directions. And that's because when he's drawing, when he's looking at his left eye, his gaze is a little bit to the left. And when he's drawing his right eye, his gaze is a little bit to the right. So your gaze is, when you do a self-portrait from a mirror, your gaze is not consistent. And that's actually a good clue that the drawing was done from a mirror and not from a photograph. Of course, another clue that it wasn't done from a photograph is that it was done in the 1500s. Okay, we're going to start doing details now. Oh, yeah, I was going to check. So now we're going to zoom in and look at some details. So here is a very elegant thing that we're going to try to get right. I'm going to sharpen my pencil. This is the lash line right here. I'm going indefinite on it now, and notice how the lash line goes out past the curve here. This is the inside of the eyelid. Can everybody see that? This little space is really important because that's what defines the inside of the lid. Notice that the lower lash line is barely there. It's like a very soft, faint line, and it comes around and it meets the upper lash line. And you can kind of barely see it, but there's the thickness of the eyelid across the bottom is just barely visible. And now that I've done that, I can go in and do what some of you did already, which is I can be more definite about the placement of the iris and of the pupil. Now there's a very faint crease for the lid above the eye, like that, and that's about it for the eye. It's really amazing how much of the structure is clear in this drawing, even though it's so subtly drawn. You can see like there's a little indication of the outside of this curve, this plane change where the eye socket ends, and just a little bit of shading above the eye. It's just, I mean, we should expect it to be very well drawn, but it's Raphael. He does not have an angular cheekbone. Here's the height peak of the cheekbone, but he's got a pretty full cheek. So we come down and around, and the form is very rounded. And then we come down to the chin. And he's got this very subtle little overlap where the one half of the chin overlaps the other half, and then where the chin overlaps the neck. Notice I have not yet drawn the bridge of the nose at all, but I have kind of created this little line, which I just realized is a little misleading because it's sort of angling a little too steeply out. So this line is going to start here, but it's going to be more vertical. And you're barely touching the paper right now. You see that? There is an outline here, but it's barely there. So we're going to come down. We want to make sure we have enough space between the cheek and the tip of the nose to fit. You could fit like at least one iris in there. And then we're going to come and do a harder line right here, which is the receding nostril. You see it's barely shows. Just shows as that little dark accent. And then the nostril that faces us is basically this elliptical form with a little bit of shadow inside. And the parentheses of the back of the ala stays well inside this shadow shape that we already drew. So don't go too far out. Now the real subtlety comes in on this dark accent. You see how it gets a little darker right here and at the tip of the nose. and a little darker outside the ala over here and under the nose. And when you look at all those like barely there little smudges that make up this nose, and yet how perfectly it reads, it's really kind of amazing. Okay, so I'm feeling like I put the back of the ala too far out. So you're going to watch me make a correction here, and you can tell me if it looks better. This correction is about a 1/16 of an inch, and that looks a little better to me. And here's the little shadow under the nose. And rather than, something still feels a little weird to me about the nose, but instead of getting it perfect, I want to move on, do the first draft of all the features before I get too fussy. So I'm going to indicate vaguely kind of where the ala is, and then I'm going to do this first central curve of the mouth. I'm sorry, where the philtrum is. First central curve of the mouth. Notice this curve is super foreshortened out here, barely there, and then this curve is elongated because it's facing us. And what you have to get used to is you're no longer putting the middle curve of the mouth in the middle, you're shoving it way over to the right, and that's what people have a hard time doing. And a little shadow under the bottom lip. And I probably need just a little more depth to my chin now. So I'm just going to bump that down about 1/8 of an inch. And we are almost ready for the other eye. This is probably the hardest thing to place correctly. We're going to start with that upper lash line again. Very faint touch for the lower lash line. And when you're trying to draw the iris, remember to look at the negative spaces around it. So I'm looking at this little triangle of light here and this bigger triangle of light here. And I'm trying to make them, if these shapes are right, then the iris is just going to place itself correctly. There's that pupil again, right up near the eyelid. There's the crease for the eyelid fold, and a little darkening again for the eye socket plane change. There. And I feel like I just made that way too big. Just make it a little smaller. If you don't press hard, it's easy to make these corrections. If you're grinding your paper, it's going to be hard. But notice I just made a significant little correction in about 5 seconds without any sign of erasing because my first try was so faint. That looks a little better to me. So I'm going to measure right off my screen. And the left eye traced from my screen is this wide, and the right eye is this wide. And you can see that the one on the right, because it's facing us, is about 50% bigger from left to right. So you can check that in your own drawing like this. Measure this width, and then make sure that the width of this eye is about 50% bigger. One of the most common things that people struggle with is your brain really wants the eyes to be the same size. And so people generally make this eye too small or this eye too big. So just check your work and make sure that there's about a 50% difference between the two eyes. And I'm erasing my shadow map so that I can create this nice, very soft edge along the plane change here. Again, I'm shading backwards because I'm left-handed, but this will be more natural for almost all of you. And I want you to resist the temptation a lot of you are going to have to draw a definite jawline here. You see how there's no hard overlap here? What we find instead is just a slight intensifying of the shadow. Gets darker as it comes right up under here. And then there's just a barest hint of a reflected light under the chin. Again, the subtlety is kind of mind-blowing. But you see what I'm talking about right here? You can read just a tiny bit of reflected light. Okay, I've drawn this like 7 times, but this curve, I just keep being unhappy with it. So. A lot of you are always asking me, how do you draw hair? And I'm always responding, just copy. There's a million ways to draw hair. You just have to sort of copy how others have done it and find a way that you like. But this is a beautiful simplification of hair in this drawing. Yep. Notice he looks just a little jowly in my drawing, like there's a little too much fullness right here. So I already adjusted this once. I'm going to pull back like another 1/16 of an inch, and he just got much younger looking and more slender. Okay. Yeah. I'm frankly a little distressed at how ugly my boy looks. Like, he's so pretty in the original, and I don't know. He looks like he's about 14. He's a freshman. Well, what would that even mean? Like, how do you know he's not a woman? Just because I told you.
I'm gonna give him eyelashes.
No, he's so much prettier in Raphael's drawing than mine. I don't mean like. Okay, this is going on YouTube, Adam. So.
Oh yeah, also if we finish about time, since it's Friday, we do a furry Friday.
Is it Friday?
Yeah, it's a Friday. You know, furry Friday.
Wait, let me. I gotta.
Do a furry Friday. I will. Alright. But I do the back for that. That's
Oh man, I don't even want to. I don't even want to put this on YouTube now. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this recording. So I'm gonna now. Let's pay attention to what we're seeing in the hair. Everybody, attention, please. I usually say not to try to draw one hair at a time. I do a first shading first. Notice he is drawing the direction the hair is growing right from the start, but he's making these little clumps of of lines so that they're reading as shadow shapes and not as individual hairs. So try to copy that basic technique. See if you can make something like that happen. So at this point, I feel like my drawing is slightly better looking, but I kind of lost the gaze. Like he's looking off. He's not looking at us anymore, and I'm not sure how that happened. Okay, you think we're about done? Okay, I'm going to stop this video. Really hard for me to tell exactly what I did wrong, but it just looks so ugly.
I think it's in the right eye. It's basically just too fat. It's in the nose and the eyes. The nose is pretty wide. The eye is in the center. Yeah.
This eye?
Yeah. It looks a little too far. It looks like they have sun in the eye. The chin's too fat.
There's a number of problems.
It doesn't look twinky enough, you know? It's just look at
Did anyone make him better looking?
Mine looks really good.
Let's look at the student work. I want to put the student work in the video for the folks at home. For my followers. Okay, so that helped a little. I just moved the eye just to probably another 1/16 of an inch towards the middle. And I'm going to move this highlight in a little bit. That looks a little better, right? Yeah, I can support this now. So once again, and I know you've heard me say this a million times, but there is absolutely nothing else in the whole world that you could draw where moving one thing 1/16 of an inch is where you're even gonna notice. And for this drawing, I think that made a huge difference for me.
What about a board that measures by 16ths of an inch?
You got me, Adam. So I'm gonna pause the video again. Then I'm gonna collect your work, and we're gonna put your drawings in the video. But take a picture of them first for Canvas. And I'm gonna collect them in 1 minute. Okay, now we're going to take a quick look at the drawings of my ECE class, and we're not going to name them at their request, but
You want to do me a favor, square up this nostril a bit.
flare the nostril a bit,
Yeah, see on that.
like that. Maybe a little more like that. Okay, very good. I'm not going to provide a lot of commentary. I just want you to see your drawings in context. I think maybe one thing that throws this one a little is that a little too much angle for the eyes. Probably here too. So we're used to putting the eyes on this on a horizontal line, and some of you put a little too much angle there. That's a lovely drawing. Really, really hard to make him as cute as he is in the original. This has a great expression. So here too, just a little, maybe a little too much angle, do you think? Very nice. Maybe a little too full on the lip on this one. Okay, so this drawing is a good example of somebody's having a hard time with the idea of asymmetry. And that's what I was emphasizing during the lesson. Notice if we measure this eye, it's about the same width as that eye. You see what I mean? And notice if we look for where the middle curve of the mouth is, it's about in the middle of the mouth. You see that? So if this person doesn't mind, I'm just going to fix those two things, and you're going to see what happens. So I'm going to make this, here's the center curve of the mouth. Here's the left curve. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I'm going to make the right curve a little bigger. So see how the mouth now, like, it starts to turn that corner a little bit? And then this eye is really well drawn, and it's the right size. But this eye is too big. And the reason it's too big, again, is because you're trying to make them symmetrical. And if I foreshorten this eye properly and make it smaller, now we start to get a sense of the head. We describe it as the head is now turning. Like this feels like a receding plane. Can everyone appreciate? I did this pretty crudely, but can you appreciate how now it feels like the plane is receding and it really didn't before? Yeah. Okay. Great job on the asymmetry of the mouth here, and pretty good on the eyes. A little hard on the eyelashes. Good job on asymmetry with this one. Really nice shading on the nose. Good mouth structure. This is really probably need a little more depth on the chin on this one, and I think you had it, and then you moved up a little, but I think the chin is a little longer, right?
Yeah, I moved it up.
This is probably the prettiest one in the batch, and
Oh, this is.
really looks, I think, prettier than the one I did, so I'm a little jealous. Very nice. And this one is going to give me nightmares. It's kind of spooky. So now that you're looking at this again, what do you think is the biggest problem here? Can you see? The eyes are a little too much the same size. Yes. So why don't I? Do you mind? You don't mind, do you? No. So I'm gonna just draw this a little smaller, and see how the head turns better now. And then the other main thing is actually this shadow placement. You see how wide the bridge of the nose is? If I just bring this shadow over a little, that narrows the bridge of the nose and starts to look pretty good. I think like Joe's, you need a little more depth on the chin. You could try that too. And you tried to suggest a hard overlap here when, as I was trying to say, there's really you can't really read where the jaw ends along this plane change. It's a soft plane change, so it needs to be a little more like that. Does that make sense? Okay, and that's it for the video. And I would say, yeah, this is definitely prettier than mine, so nice job.